Hello guys, this is Krishna Arya, and in last session we studied about how to delete the data of the database table using PHP forms. Now in this session our task is to creating a project that can perform all the operations on database. Now what do you mean by all the operations? The four basic operations that are insert, update, delete and select that we have already seen in our last four lectures. So now it's time to combine all four and perform a project. So now let's start our task. So we will work on the project and our data table will be of our favorite movies. So we will take 2 to 3 favorite movies and we will select the data, insert data, delete data and update the data. So before performing any type of operation, it is necessary that the table should be existing on the database. So first of all, let's create our table. So this is PHP myadmin, and in the practice database we are performing all our operations. So we have to create a table and let's give the name as movie. Now I want two columns, that is ID and the movie name. So ID and let's give as movie ID and movie name. So the movie name will be in characters, so the data type will be varchar. And let's give the size as 255. Now the movie ID. I want the movie ID as auto incremented. So a schema of the table is ready. Now let's create the table. So a table named as movie has been created in the database practice. So now our task is to start the coding. Okay, so first of all we will create a folder and in that folder we will save all our files. So let's create a folder. So first of all we need a home page that will display all the data of the data table and the three options, that is insert, update and delete. Okay, so now let's create a home page. So now let's save it as index.php. So now let's give the title as home page. Now in this body tag we need a table tag and 3 buttons and 1 heading tag. So now between the center tag, let's give the heading between h1 tags. Our heading will be my favorite movies. Now our next task is to fetch all the data. But before that, let's create our homepage some attractive. So for that we will apply a background image to the homepage. I have already downloaded an image to provide to the homepage background. Okay, so it's here. Let's place in the movies and let's create a folder named as image, and then we will place that image in this folder. Okay, so now to give the background image we need the CSS, and over here we will apply the CSS in the style tag. Okay, so now by this way you can give the background image. Now let's try and let's see how our homepage looks. So now this is our home page. As we have given in the center tag the heading, that is my favorite movies, and our background image. Now our next thing is to show all our data. As we have created the table just now and the data is not present, so first let's add the data so that it can be seen in the home page. Now to insert the data in our table, click on the insert button and give the data. Now ID is auto incremented, so there is no need to give the ID, and let's type the movie name as ABC and another movie name is BC. Okay, so now our table contains two datas, that is one ABC and two BCD. So now let's start our task to display the records into the home page. So our data will be in the home page in the form of a HTML table. So for that we will use the table tag, and then between these table tags, first of all let's give the heading, that is movie ID, and then we need is movie name. Okay, so our heading has come, that is movie ID and movie name. Now let's fetch the data from the database into the tabular format. So to fetch the data, as we know that the select query will be fired, and for that the PHP tag will be used. So start the PHP tag and end it. Now first of all we have to provide the connection using MySQL underscore connect, and give its parameters. So first is hostname, then username, password, and then the name of the database on which we are working. And if MySQL underscore connect contains any type of error, then the code will be died. So for that, or die unable to connect. So now provide a select query. So now what the MySQL underscore query will do, it will execute the select query in the given connection, and the data will be passed to the result. So now we have to fetch more than one data. So for that while loop will be used. Okay, so while the data will be fetched, till that time we have to assign the data to the table. So now it's the task of HTML. So complete the PHP tag, and now after the completion of the PHP tag, now let's start the TR tag. Then under that TD tag, and between these tags we have to fetch the id. So we have to print the id. So for that echo will be used, and for using echo we have to use the php tags. Echo $, that is our variable over here, and the name of the column, that is movie id. And now do the same thing for the another column, that will be the movie name. And now we have to complete our bracket of the while loop. So again start the php tag, as it's the part of php. Okay, so now let's see that this works or not. Hope so that this work. Okay, so movie id 1 and movie name abc, movie id 2 and movie name bcd has been successfully fetched. Our both data has been successfully fetched. So now first of all let's give the border to the table so that it looks pretty good. And for that, in the table tag give the attribute as border is equal to 2 pixel solid black. Okay, so now this looks good. Now our next task is to give the all three buttons, that is insert, update and delete. And to apply the button we need the button tag. So now all the three button has been provided, that is insert, delete and update. So now when the button will be clicked for insert, delete or update, according to the button click we have to redirect the control to the particular page that will be for insert, delete and update. So now when the button will be clicked and you want to pass the control to the another page, and to do that you have to use on click, and in that location .href is equal to, you have to give the link over here on which you have to redirect. So now let's create a file and let's name is at insert.html for testing, and let's give the URL as insert.html. So now when the insert button will be clicked, the control should be go to the insert.html. And for better understanding, let's write the hello over here. Okay, so now let's test. Okay, so this works. Now let's take all three buttons some downward so that between the table and the column some space will be assigned. Okay, so this looks cool, pretty. Now let's give some CSS to the button. In that let's give the height to 55 pixels and width to 75 pixels, and then give the border color, that will be 2 pixel solid green. Okay, so let's see how the button looks. Okay, so it looks cool. Let's increase some width and decrease some height. So let's give is 80, and okay, so this looks somewhat nice. So now our next task is to insert, delete and update the data. So now when you click on the insert, the data should be inserted. So for that, as we have already done for our testing, that when the insert button will be clicked, insert.html should be loaded. And let's give to other two. And now let's create all the 2 pages. And let's give the link over here, that is for delete.html, and for update the name was update.html. Okay. So now first of all, let's work on how to insert the data. To insert the data, we need to one text box that will be of name of the movie. Okay, so now let's give the label as movie name, and give a text box so that the user can write the name of the movie. Now we need a submit button. Okay, so now our basic form for inserting is created, that is movie name and the text box, and a submit button that contains the value insert, means the text will be insert. Now when the insert button will be clicked, the control should be passed to insert.php, and the method by which the data will be sent to insert.php will be post. So now let's create a file, that is insert.php. So now a page name as insert.php has been created, and now we have to take the value of the text box into a variable. That will be let's take a variable name as name, and using the post method assign the value of the text box name. Now let's provide a connection using mysqli_connect and give the parameters to it, that is the host name, then username, password, and the name of the database on which we are working. Okay, so if mysql_connect will contain any type of error, then the code will be died there and the unable to connect message will be shown. Now our next task is to assign a insert query. So for that I am using the insert variable, and the query will be insert into table name, that is movie. Then let's give the column name, as movie ID is auto incremented, so no need to assign that name. The next column is movie_name, and the value will be between the single inverted comma, that is the name of the variable. The single inverted comma is required because it contains the characters, that is as we have assigned the value where. Okay, now let's fire that query. That is for that we will use the result variable to store the result, and mysql_query will be used to fire the query. mysql_query, as you know that it accepts the two parameters, that is connection and the query. If mysql_query will contain any type of error, then the code will be dead and unable to insert data will be the error message which will be seen to the user. Now if the mysql_query works perfectly and the data has been inserted, then we have to print that data inserted, else we have to print that data is not inserted. So now we have to check that data is successfully inserted or not. So for that, use the variable result, and if it contains the value 1, then the data has been successfully inserted. Else we have to display the message that data has not been inserted. So the task of the insert has been completed over here. Let's test this, that it works or not. So now let's try. Let's see on clicking insert. Yes, there's a text box name, movie name. Let's give the name as JKL and click on the insert button. Yes, the data has been successfully inserted. Now let's check in our database. Yes, the data has been successfully inserted. Now this page looks some empty, so let's give the same background image to this page also. So this looks pretty cool. So now our next task will be of deleting the record. So now let's create the delete page. So now let's start with the delete and To delete the data, we need a text box that will accept the ID from the user, and then we have to check that whether the ID entered by the user exists in the database or not. If the database doesn't contain that ID, then we have to show an error message that the ID doesn't exist. And if the ID that is entered by the user matches the ID that is in the database, then we have to perform the delete operation. So now first of all, let's create the HTML part and give the title as delete data. Then use the table tag and form tag. Now we have to give the label over here, that will be the movie ID, and we need a text box over here. So input type will be text and name will be let's say as MID. Now we need a submit button. And the name will be submit, and the value I want is delete. Okay, so when the submit button, that is the delete button, will be clicked, the control will go to the delete.php file, in which we will transfer the value of the text box MID into a variable, and then we will check that whether the ID exists or not, and according to that delete will be done. So now action is equal to delete.php, and method is equal to post, means the ID that will be transferred to the delete.php, that will be sent through the post method. And now let's create the delete.php file. So first of all, we have to take the ID into a variable. So for that I am using the variable MID, and using the post method I am transferring the value of MID, that is the text box, into the variable MID. So now we have to check that whether the ID exists or not. So for that we have to fire the select query that will select all the IDs from the database. So let's provide the connection. So if MySQL underscore connect will contain any type of error, then the code will be died and the message will be shown that unable to connect to the database. So now we have to assign the select query, and for that I am using the select variable, and the query will be like select and then the movie ID, from table name, and the table name is movie. Now we have to fire the query. And MySQL underscore query will contain two parameters, that will be the connection and the query. And if it contains any type of error, then the code will be died and the error message will be shown, that is unable to select the ID. So now we have to transfer the selected ID into the variable. So while loop will be used. And I will be using the variable ID to store the ID that is fetched. Now we have to compare that both the ID equals or not. So MID equal to ID. Then you have to perform the delete query. So for that, assign the delete query. Now we have to fire the query of the delete. So mysqli underscore query and give its parameter connection and query, and if error will be generated, then show an error message enable to delete the data. Now let's check whether the query has been successfully implemented or not. So for that, if the result variable contains the value 1, then we have to echo the message. That means that we have to print the message that the data has been deleted. And if the result doesn't contain one value, means the query has been not successfully fired, the result has not been updated. So we have to show the message that data is not deleted. Now if the ID matches 10, the delete operation will perform, and if it doesn't get matched, then we have to show an error message that please enter valid ID. So over here our delete operation is completed. Let's see that works or not. Okay, so there are one is movie ID, and the movie name is ABC, and the movie ID is 2, and the movie name is BCD. Now let's click on the delete button, and I want to delete the movie ID number 2. So data has been deleted, and when I again reload the page, the movie ID 2 should be invalid. But first let's check in the database that it has been deleted or not. Yes, only one movie ID is there, that is ABC. Now let's try by entering the movie ID 2. Please enter valid ID. So the delete operation works perfectly. Now our next task is to update the data, but before updating the data, let's give the background image to delete.html. Okay, so it has done. Now we have to update the data. So now let's start our update file. First of all, we need a text box that will accept the movie ID. from the user, and then after clicking on go button or submit button, we will check that whether the id is existing or not. If the id exists, then we have to perform the update operation, as we have to show a message that please enter valid id. So first of all, create the html file, and in that give the title as update data. Then in the body section we have to take the center tag, and between the center tags we have to use the table tag and form tag. So first give the label over here, that will be movie id, and then we need a text box over here, and let's give the name as mid. Then we need a submit button, so over here our update.html is completed. Now we have to create the update.php file, and so now in this php file we need to create one text box that will contain the movie name as per the id which has been entered. So first task is to take the id or that user has entered into a variable. So for that I am using a variable mid, and using the post method we have to take the entered text of the mid into the variable mid. Now let's create text box, and use the center tag, then use the table tag and form tag. Now let's give the label over here as movie name, and let's give the text box over here. So for that input type will be text, name is equal to mname, and then we need a submit button. Okay, so now we have to fetch the data, that is the movie name, and we have to place that movie name into the text box mname. So for that we have to select the data, and for that we have to fire the select query. So first of all, let's give the connection using mysqli underscore connect, and it takes some parameters. So if MySQL underscore connect will contain any type of error, then the code will be died and error message will be seen that unable to connect to the database. Now our next task is to apply the select query. So I am using the variable select and select that is we want to select the movie name. From table name, that is movie, where movie ID is equal to $MID. Now let's fire the query. So if MySQL underscore query will contain any type of error, then the code will be dead and then the message will be seen that unable to select the name of the movie. Now we have to store the name of the movie into a variable, and that variable we have to use as a value in the text box. So let's take a variable. I am taking the variable m underscore name and storing the value of the movie name column. So over here the selected has been completed. Now we have to give the value over here, that will be to echo the variable. So use the PHP tags and then use the m underscore name, that is the variable name. Now we have to update the data, but before updating the data, let's see that this works or not. So now let's click on update, and as there is only one ID, let's give 1. This works. Now our next task is, if I enter the ABCD instead of ABC over here, and when I click on the update button, the data should be updated. So for that, let's start our code. When this update button will be entered, we have to give the action as update1.php, and the method will be post. So now in update1.php, we have to store the value of this mname text box into a variable. So for that, I am using the variable movie name and using the post method, let's take the value into the variable. Now we have to fire the update query. So for that, let's give the connection and it will be using MySQLi underscore connect, and it contains 4 parameters, that is host name, username, password, and the name of our database. And if it contains any type of error, then the code will be dead and the message will be shown that unable to connect to database. Now we have to assign the update query, and the query will be like update table name set, then column name, that is movie name is equal to, and we have to assign the variable over here that contains the updated movie name. And now we have to fire our last query, that is, and I am firing it using MySQLi underscore query. and give the appropriate parameters, that is connection and the variable to update. And if that contains any type of error, then we have to show that unable to update the data. Now let's check that whether the query has been successfully implemented or not. If result variable contains 1, then echo that the data is updated. And if it doesn't contain the value 1, then we have to show that data is not updated. So now let's try this works or not. So instead of ABC, I am writing BCD, and let's update. Data is updated. Now let's see in the database that it's updated or not. Okay, so the movie name from ABC to BCD is updated. So by this way you can make the small project that perform all four operations, that is all basic operations of the database. And thank you for watching my video. If you like it, then please subscribe my channel.